Hello and welcome to Series on Tactics and Strategy Player's Guide, the Exaction Squad. This team, I just love this team. They're not great, but I love them. Let's get into it. So, Exaction Squad, why can't they be good? I just want them to be good, guys. That's all I want. So let's have a look at the team details. Let's run through some basic info. This is an 11 unit team. They can be built with one box, but honestly, you're going to need two boxes. The reason you're going to need two boxes is because I don't believe there's enough subductors, and there is quite a few unique models with this team. So if you just buy the one box, you're going to have to basically miss out on a few different units, which you might want to run later on. So if you buy the second box, you basically want to build every different model that's available. So like the leader with the shield, probably you're going to want to build like the Revelator, the Melicator, all that kind of gear, all the different gunner options. Just build them, maybe except for the grenade launcher. Obviously this is dependent on what you want. Have a look at the stat cards. But then any remaining sprues that's left from the second box, you probably want to make the Vigilance, or you probably can sell them individual models on eBay for other people trying to build the team. So they're the two options. I think you're going to want 4 subductors, to be completely honest. That is a lot, but for some teams, that's kind of what you're going to want to bring. This team's really a pretty solid toolbox team. So you have a bunch of different build options. There's going to be a few models that are kind of just auto takes, but honestly the team has a lot of flexibility within the models that are available. It has a current win rate of 42% for competitive events, which is, I think, a little maybe underrepresented with the current tax that have just come out, as we've just got approved ops 2025. So with the 2025 changes, I think this team might actually just do a lot better with the changes to the crit and to the tack. I think they struggle into elite teams just purely because of the maths of the dice. Anytime you come up against a team that is got 5 attack dice, you're going to just struggle more than 4 attack dice. So just keep that in mind. The team is very hard to play. They're definitely an advanced difficulty team. The operative selection needs to be really precise a lot of the time, and then you need to adopt a particular kind of play style with the team. They also have like multiple abilities that need to be utilized to like maximize their value, and the firefight ploys are also very difficult to pull off, but you need to be able to pull them off to maximize the value of the team. We have all 2 APL unit models, which is a little underwhelming and can feel a bit limiting. You do have access to a Vox signifier, but as we get into it, we'll talk about why you might not always have the space to bring him. This team, what this team wants to do with particular things like the Nuncio Aquila is you want to deny your opponent from scoring the crit and just scoring in general. This team's more about stopping your opponent than it is about you doing what you want to do. So I think this is a team that favors like a reactive play style and favors you just getting up in their face and stopping them, whatever they're doing. So I've got another little chance to ramble here, and this is a lot of similarities to the Mandrakes with some of these slides. You'll notice if you've stuck around for that guide. So this team, man, I want this team to work. They break all the rules, which is what I love. They can shoot into combat, which I think is like the greatest thing ever. They have shotguns, which are fun, like the damage profiles of 4/4, which is awesome. They've got so much cool things that they look like they can do. When you look at these cards and you look at these models, you think, oh, this is going to be just great. Like the theory versus reality is that when you actually get into combat, all of a sudden it's like you realize that you're just trying to stay alive. You're not actually going into combat to do damage. You're going into combat to stop the enemy, and you're going into combat to hide, basically. So it is a little bit situational with this team. Once you play them a couple of times, I'm sure you'll get an understanding of what I'm trying to say here. But yeah, the theory looks like this team just does work. The reality is that like really you play in a different style, basically, which is fine, but it is what it is. The aesthetic of the team's great. I've actually not built the proper models. I've built Sisters of Battle. I've used I forget the model names. Maybe I'll put them on the screen, but they're the shield ones. I've used them shield ones as the subductor and the leader, and then I've bought shotguns from like extra sprues that people have had, and I've kit bashed them onto the sisters. So all the sisters have the right weapons and the right things. They're all roughly the same size. It looks really cool. I love them to death. I'll try and get some photos of them. Okay, and then we got some struggles. We've got to do dice dances against other operatives with this team, and this is where it becomes problematic, is that like your subductors are 4-on-4, 4-4. You can parry out 2. The odds are you get 2 hits. You need like combat support to get it like 4-on-3. And then it's basically, like I said, about keeping yourself alive. It's very hard to be confident with this team. Every once in a while I get confident and then I just get wrecked. And so it's like that confidence all goes away. You have to play pretty cagey and defensively, but I want this team to do well. I'm really hoping they pick up a little buff next time around. And man, subductors, you know, Navy Breaches just went to 10 wounds. Give the subductors 10 wounds and the leaders like 11 wounds, and then we're good. I swear, if that happens, we're good, guys. Let's get into the models. This team is 2 APL across the board, 6-inch move across the board, except for the Mastiff, which we'll talk about. 4 up save if you don't have a shield, 3 up save if you do have a shield. Very straightforward. 9 wounds on the leader. Everyone else is 8 wounds. So pretty standard like array of stats there. The Proctor Exactant is your leader. You have 2 options with the build. You basically take a shotgun and a baton, or you take the Dominator Maul and the Assault Shield, which is probably the better option in my eyes. He becomes a shield then. He's pretty strong and reliable, but he needs to be kept alive because of the Nuncio Aquila token. So the Nuncio Aquila is amazing. When you do it for the first time, you place it within 6 inches of your leader, and then it moves each turn up to 6 inches. But from that point, you cannot re-pick it up and put it back down again. So that's where it becomes frustrating. And if your leader dies, it goes away. That's the second part of where it becomes frustrating. So you kind of need to do this weird little dance where you keep your leader close to the front to put it down, but then away from the action so he stays alive. So it is a little bit of a dance there that you need to work around. I think the leader pretty much, you just bring the shield. The Dominator Maul is really good, 4-on-3, 4-4. Lethal 5, Shock and Repress. Repress is the faction ability where you can, you always strike first and you can parry 2 hits. Now, if you get a crit, you can parry 2 crits with that crit, or a crit and a hit. If you get a hit, you can't parry the crits, much like regular combat. So that means that the lethal 5 on this guy does work, and it does help a lot. So the leader's pretty good, pretty reliable. The Nuncio Aquila marker requires a little bit of getting used to and how to position and everything like that. But generally, you kind of just put it on the midpoint, and then you just kind of leave it there to deny the enemy scoring it, or to make them put a bunch of resources into scoring that midpoint. The Chigoran is next. He is arguably one of the best healers in the game. The reason being that when it says subtract 1 APL from this stat and that other operative stat, you have the ability to just ignore stat changes. So that means that then you don't lose the APL when you do the medic ability, which is great. So 2d3 heal within control range, I think. On the back half of that. The big thing as well is that the healer has the same shotgun as everybody else, basically. So the 4-on-3, 4-4, range 6, if you're not needing him as a medic, he just becomes a great like shooting operative like everyone else on the team effectively. So really good medic for this team. Pretty much bring him most of the time against shooting teams. His medic ability doesn't trigger in melee, so yeah, against the shooting teams, he has a lot more value. The Castigator's up next. Castigator is probably your best melee operative in terms of 4-on-3, 5-5 rending shock. I think only really the leader gets better. He doesn't have repress, which is a bit of a shame, but that's okay. He has the endangered focus, so ignores that, changes to his stats like normal. He saves on a crit 5 basically for shooting, and then he has the Cascader's Arrest, which is really good as well. The big problem with this guy is that into certain teams, you just don't really end up bringing him unless you need that heavy melee support. So he's really solid, don't get me wrong, but he's really there just to support your subductors in the melee matchups, I think. We have the Leash Master next. So the Leash Master and the Cyber Mastiff pretty much work together. They can activate individually, or what's fun is you can activate them at the same time. When they do, it's basically like you treat them as one unit with 4 APLs. So that means that like you can move the Mastiff, then move the Leash Master, then attack with the Mastiff, or then do the Handler ability, whatever it is with the Leashmaster, and then attack with the Mastiff, for example. There's lots of flexibility there to do some fun kinds of shenanigans. But basically, the Leashmaster is just like the same as everybody else, but with the handler abilities. So he's really there to support the Mastiff. The Mastiff is a really key piece, I think, in my mind, pretty much like an auto take, because of the amount that he can move when he needs to, and the fact that he can pick up and place markers for mission actions. So for particular things like your security, the new security plant banner, the Mastiff can plant the banner, which is hilarious. So he can just run up, plant the banner somewhere that's really hard to get to with all of his movement, and then you have the attack then, ready to go. So he can actually also do some serious work in melee as well with the Lethal 5 and Relentless, and then a 10-inch charge. So I've had him like kill a Marine that has fists, and then charge a second Marine and apprehend, so the Marine can't go away and that the hit stats one worse. So don't forget to use apprehend. It's very, very good. It's the taking one away to the hit stats pretty massive. The gunners, so you have 3 options. The web is definitely going to be the one that you take most often, and that's purely just because it's hitting on 3s rather than hitting on 4s. So you just have a better chance of doing damage there as well as hitting. The 12-inch range is pretty solid. There's not like a lot of times I go, they're outside of 12 inches. Usually they're within 12 inches. Just because you move up 6, they move up their 6. At that point, there's really only 12 inches left of the board. So you're generally getting the Weber shots off. Severe and stun's really great. You're just guaranteed to reduce an APL when you shoot with that weapon. So even if you don't kill them, you're just doing work there. The grenade launcher and heavy stubber are pretty much underwhelming. If you're taking these guys, you need to take the strat ploy that gives them balanced, and that basically just tries to get them an extra dice roll. You're usually hitting twice, maybe 3 times if you're lucky with the grenade launcher, and then the stubber you're usually hitting 3 times, like honestly. So it just becomes a little underwhelming if you're going up against a team that has good saves. The gun is probably one of the more optional models in my experience. Okay, Malachite next. Malachite I think is an auto pick. He gets a free mission action, so he kind of becomes a pseudo 3 APL unit for this team. The second part of this is the Veriscan. Veriscan is great to put on for your other units in the team. So, for example, the Veriscan with the Marksman gives the Marksman Severe. The Severe gives you Dev 4 wounds with the Marksman. That's just 4 damage straight up that can be just done with the Marksman there. So, and then that buff stays on that model for all of your team, basically. So you dot a model up, that model has the Veriscan ability. Whilst it has Veriscan ability, all of your friendly operatives have the severe weapon rule against it. So it's pretty huge. Apart from that, he's got the same thing. All of these guys pretty much have the same thing, except for like the Revelatum, the Marksman, and the Gunner, which is a 4-on-3, 4-4 shotgun, 6-inch range. So great shooting, basically. The Marksman really is kind of an MVP. He does a lot of work. He can threaten elites pretty well, because if you can crit once or twice with the lethal 5 up with the optics there, then you're just doing solid dev wounds, and then that can be pretty devastating for the elites. So the Marksman's a great model. I've definitely done 12 dev wounds before, and it's felt amazing to do, because there's just nothing they can do in response. So the only big issue there is the heavy profile. So he cannot move and shoot. If he moves and shoots, he's shooting on the same profile as everyone else, just without a range limitation. The concealed positions are obviously always really good. Optics pretty much needs to be used. So how this guy works is he's just like a little turret. He gets into a position, he puts optics on himself, and then he takes a shot. So that's pretty much just how that's going to have to work. The Revelatum's probably the second or third auto pick. I think the Marksman I'd consider an auto pick, just quickly. The Revelatum is a second auto pick just because of the fact that he has spot. So on certain maps, the Seek Light rule is obviously just super handy, especially like into the Dark and 2 mod. So, but you have to be within 3 inches of the Revelatum, and this is where it gets like a bit contradictory, because he has first in field, which allows him just to do a reposition action without the 3-inch limitation. So you can move 6 inches up into the kill zone from your staging point, your deployment. So that's really great. But then you move 6 inches up, all of a sudden you're more than 3 inches away from all your other models for spot. So it's one of these kind of compromised abilities where you want to be able to use the first in field to get good positioning and stuff early. But then in doing so, you can't use it with the marksman, because then the marksman has to move and set up. And at that point, he loses the ability to shoot nicely. So one of these little kind of weird things where it's like you kind of have to pick the direction you're going with the Revelatum. Like I said, onto Into the Dark and Tomb World, you just kind of bring him, because then Light Barricades are just all of a sudden, effectively invisible or clear. This guy's weapon's a little underwhelming in terms of it's the shot pistol, not the shotgun. So it's just 3/3 damage profile. And it has a range limitation for if you want lethal 5, but it still does work. Every once in a while you'll be surprised at how well it does. So definitely a great model, solid model to bring along. Okay, now we have the Subductors. Subductors are your bread and butter unit. The question really just is always, how many are you bringing? Are you bringing 2? Are you bringing 3? Are you bringing 4? They have, with the Repress ability, they always fight first. They can block up to 2 things. What you want to do with the Subductor is you just want to charge as many models as you can with it and then just leave it there. You don't really want to fight other models unless you're, like, if you've charged 3 models, sure, fight one of them. If you've charged a single model, do not fight it. Just sit there and wait for support. So these guys are really just to tie down enemy models, and the more valuable the enemy model, the better ultimately. You're going to want to roll your dice to prevent the enemy killing you. That's pretty much the only reason you want to fight or retaliate, is just to stay alive. So you really need to be supported by your other models. I wish they had 10 HP on 8 wounds. They just kind of die to 2 hits. So if you don't roll well with the shock maul, then you're just dead in the water, effectively, which kind of sucks. Next we have the Vigilant. Man, the Vigilant is fun, but you just don't have room in the team for him. He can shoot in close quarters, which is really fun. He just can't charge and shoot, which is a little underwhelming. Like, why not just let him charge and shoot? And I don't see why there's that limitation there, but it is what it is. So basically, you just want to be able to charge him in at the end of the turning point. At the start of the next turning point, you shoot and kill something, and then you charge to the next model. You need to kind of daisy chain them together is how it's meant to work. The reality is that that's just not what real life looks like, but that's the theory, I guess. So you just don't often bring them. I'd build maybe 2 just in case for fun. Maybe they'll get a little glow up, or maybe the way the interactions will change and they'll be worth something. But yeah, at this point, they're just outshone by other models, really. We have the Vox Signifier, I think last here. So pretty much standard comms unit, same weapon as everyone else, which is nice. Giving an APL out's great, but at the same time, can you fit him into the roster with all the other star units we've gone through? And we'll have a look at some potential loadouts later. It just becomes hard to justify the Vox Signifier in some scenarios, basically. But let's keep moving and we'll see how we go. Equipment considerations here. I think this team has some pretty good, 2 pieces of pretty good equipment, 1 piece of okay equipment, and then 1 piece of equipment that's like very situational. So the Strobing Phosphorlumens is great and pretty much an auto pick. Against elites that are only missing on 1s and 2s, this turns off half of the elites' rerolls, if they're going to reroll. So I think that this piece of equipment is generally an auto take. The only time I think you're not bringing this piece of equipment is into larger kind of hoardy teams that don't have access to rerolls. So I can think of like Chaos Cult, for example. They have like a lot of accurate and bits and pieces, and they're not often rerolling. And if they are rerolling, they're hitting on 4s. So the idea is that like you have 2s and 3s available as misses to reroll. So a lot of the time you just don't get the value out of Strobing Phosphorlumens that you would into like an elite team. So I think, take that with a grain of salt. I find myself bringing it most of the time anyway, just to try and deny a roll here or there. It has more play into certain teams. The second piece of equipment I consider auto pick is the Reinforcement Mirror Visors. This is the one that just allows you to ignore changes to your APL. So I pretty much just always bring it. This is what stops your medic from taking an APL debuff. And it also means that you're not affected by shock. So you can't have your hits shocked away in melee, which is pretty important against certain teams. The manacles are next. They're situational. I just don't find the enemies falling back very often. It's like against like other horde teams that will want to stay alive, it costs 2 APL, so they just fall back, you just recharge them, it's not a big deal. Into elite shooting teams, I guess, like maybe your higher tech and that, they're going to want to fall back potentially, but they also have way more wounds than you. So it's kind of like you're only rolling 1 dice at that point. So yeah, I think the manacles, I mean, if you've got nothing else to bring them for sure. But really, I just don't see them doing work as often as you might think they would. The special issue ammunition is next. Special issue shells, I should say. Man, this thing, once per turning point, is just a bit limiting. You want to bring them against elites, against anything with a 3-up save that's kind of bulky, like the higher tech, the canoptic, and the salvages. But against any other team, they just don't do enough. You can bring them, I think, you know, for the torrent if you're going up against maybe like a Galapox or something, but I just don't see them getting the kind of use that you would hope to get out of them. If they were twice a turning point or something like that, I think it would be a lot better, but they're just like piercing 1 on a save at 3 or better. That's really all you're bringing it for. Okay, so other equipment choices. Since you're only bringing 2, maybe 3 pieces of equipment here, you're going to need to take a universal equipment. So stuns are going to be really good because they can just be thrown into melee and they don't affect your own operatives. So that means you can really just slow down the enemy team and you're going to be close to them within 6 inches generally for your own shotgun. So there's no excuse not to throw them. You might as well just bring them, I think, 90% of the time. Crack grenades are really good against elites just because you have such limited things to piercing, but just remember they can't be thrown into combat. You can only shoot your shotguns into combat, basically. I think making lanes for your opponents is very beneficial. You want to drip feed your opponents through so you can manage the waves that come, but in walling them off, you also wall yourself off, and a lot of the new tack options want you to be in the opponent's half. So take that with a grain of salt, the whole idea of making lanes and drip feeding your opponents into you. And then obviously ladders are just important on Volcus and Beta Decima to be able to access the map base properly, especially for your marksmen. Ploys. The ploys in this team are interesting. So Guilt Reveals itself is obviously really good on the right maps. I think open maps and maps that don't have a lot of light, it has less value. But on particular maps, like definitely on Volcus, you know, you can do some work with it because the 4 inches generally covers like stronghold corners and stuff like that where you might not normally be able to take shots. So it definitely has value on the right kinds of maps. The other one is where you get the light barricades spread on into the dark, maybe 4 inches apart. So once the enemy puts their barricade down on an objective or near the halfway point, you just put yours like 3.5 inches away from that, and then they feel safe to stage up there. You stage up there, you use Guilt Reveals itself, and you shoot them off of that light barricade. That way you can have the Revelatum on one side of the map and your operatives using this on the other side of the map, and Seek Light then is kind of in effect everywhere, if that makes sense. Terminal Decree is super similar. It's once again on tight maps it works really well. On the open maps it just doesn't work because it only affects your gunners or when operatives are within 6 inches. So your marksman pretty much never gets access to this, which is a real shame. Not that he technically needs it, but you know, it just would be nice. And then your shotguns are going to need it, basically, to try and get the 4th hit every time. But like, once again, it's only within 6 inches of the operative. So you're gonna have to be up front and close, which you are most of the time with your models. Definitely, in my mind, map dependent. I've taken it on maps before and only got to use it once or twice, which has felt pretty bad. Dispense Justice is just an auto take from turning point 2 and onwards. You really want to be in melee combat with the Subductors and your leader, so that's what this is for. You're going to get Ceaseless in melee, which is super huge, as long as you haven't basically charged more than your movement stat. So just keep that in mind. Inviolate Jurisdiction is situational at best. It just, you have to be in the right place, obviously, within 2 inches of an objective marker or an enemy operative. So, you know, that can be situational. And you're just re-rolling 1 defense dice. So generally with a 4-up save, you know, I don't want to say it's not good, and it can't help you, I just don't re-roll more than a 4. So it's not good for me. But yeah, it's just situational. Like, if you've got the CP spare, go for it, why not, you know? But I think a lot of the time you're going to want to save it for the 5.5 ploys, which we'll get into now. So Long Arm of the Law is really good. It adds 3 inches to your shotguns, which makes them 9 inches then, which is amazing. That then undoes the balanced within 6, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I wish it would extend that also, so for a shot you'd get balanced, but it doesn't, so that's what it is. Obviously, situationally, you're just going to need it every once in a while. It turns the Weber into a 15-inch range, turns your shotguns into a 9-inch range. Pretty handy. You'll know when you need it, basically. Exact Punishment is amazing. It basically acts like a pseudo guard shot. But the biggest issue is usually what happens is, for it to trigger, you have to have an enemy model shoot a friendly model within 6 inches of it. If the friendly model isn't incapacitated, that's when it turns on. And a lot of the time, you know, if someone's running in to shoot you, it's like with a melter or a plasma or something like that. So that model just dies, and then you don't get access to this because it can't be incapacitated. So it's only very rarely that you get a chance, in my opinion, to use Exact Punishment. Brutal Backup's another one where it's great and it's really good if you can make it work, but it's often overkill because it's like you use an action, and then you select an enemy, and then another unit within control range can perform a free fight. So it's a lot of the time, by the time you get the second Subductor in there, or the other, basically you're only putting Subductors or the leader in there. You're not often charging anyone except for maybe the Castigator into combat. A lot of the time, at that point, you have combat support, and you can just kill the opponent anyway. So it's very much like Brutal Backup is overkill. It's just overkill. And then if you kill the model you're engaged with, and then you're left out in the open, and you can be shot, then it kind of defeats the purpose. So every once in a while, I think against elites, this has play, obviously, because you can just do an extra fight against an elite. But a lot of the time, I don't find myself wanting to use Brutal Backup, even if I can, just because I need to stay in melee combat, or I need to keep that model alive, and the free fight isn't going to do that. So a little bit compromising. There is situations for it, but it's just not used very often. Okay, an Execution Order is potentially worse again. So if you can learn how to use Execution Order and maximize its value, it's really, really good. It obviously pairs super well with Guilt Reveals itself, with the 4 inches being able to shoot, but it is also situational. It can lead to some weird tempo issues where you're basically activating twice in a row, which takes your total activations down. So against like elites and stuff where you don't want them having counteracts or as many counteracts, this can be good. You're selecting an enemy operative that controls an objective marker. The next time that operative would activate that model, you can interrupt it with a ready Exaction Squad member. But while you do, you have to fight or shoot against that enemy operative. So this one's really about staging up correctly and making sure you've got a threat there ready to go, and then trying to deny them access to that point. Don't get me wrong, it is a good ploy. It just has a lot of limitations, and you have to learn how to use it, basically. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I wanted to go through, because this is a kind of common question with this team, is like, what do you bring to the fight? What are you bringing to each kind of different matchup? These are some general and broad loadouts that I would suggest are pretty viable generally with these kinds of matchups. So into heavy melee, you're gonna want to bring 5 shields. So leader with a shield and 4 subductors. That means that you have a lot of potential to just turn off their rolls and lock them up in combat that they can't win, hopefully. Along with them, you're going to bring the Castigator because it's such a good melee operative. You're going to want to bring the Malakator to give the severe out. You're going to want to bring the Weber to stun and slow them down as they come. The Leashmaster and the Cybermastiff are going to do work to help with the Lethal 5 and Relentless on the Cybermastiff to just kill models that are engaged. And then you're going to want the Marksman to back all of that up. So as you can see, this is very much a team where you're going to move up pretty aggressively turning point 1, and then just start locking them down turning point 2, and then methodically taking them out through the rest of the turning points. You're going to have the Cyber Mastiff and the Weber available for mission actions, or potentially the Malakator as well for mission actions or for scoring, and then you know, also adding to the total appeal of locking him down and taking him out. When you go to ranged, things change pretty substantially, because a lot of the time you potentially get shot off the board before you can engage with them. So you're going to want to bring the leader with the shield again, 2 subductors this time, just to try and charge the dangerous models and lock them down. So they're going to creep up the board and then try and get to like your enemy's melter gun, or try and get to your enemy's plasma gun, for example. The Weber is going to do work. Obviously, the heavy stubber here is a choice because you can torrent if you need to, but really it's just going to be trying to get damage through and kill the shooters as they shoot you with an unlimited range option there. Revelatum's going to provide remove obscuring and seek light. The Leashmaster and the Cyber Mastiff, once again, because of the flexibility of the Cyber Mastiff, you can just charge it up to take out dangerous models like melter guns. Marksman's self-explanatory, and then the Chiggerant here you're bringing because it can bounce back up a model within the 3 inches of it that goes down in a shooting attack. So the Chiggerant has some value on this loadout. We then have like elves, so I would consider elves like high mobility, around 8 operatives, can shoot well, can fight well. Goremongers to a degree will fit into here, but that might be more of a heavy melee output team potentially. So with elves, with the model advantage that you have and the fact that they have 8 wounds, you want to get in there and hit them first in reaction to them having moved, kind of thing. So I think leader with a shield, 3 subductors, that gives you 4 shields to go against their 8 models, basically. As they come towards you, you're going to want to lock them down with the shields and try not to have them charge and fight you if possible. The Malakator is obviously going to give the Severe out. The Revelatum is going to give the Seek Light and remove obscuring for your Marksman and potentially your Leashmaster if needed. The Castigator is going to help with melee. The Leashmaster Cyber Mastiff. The Mastiff will mince an elf. So it's really about anything that's coming around the flanks, anything that's off to the edge by itself, you're going to want to put the Leashmaster and the Cyber Mastiff onto that unit. Marksman, once again, self-explanatory. You can just delete an elf with 2 dev shots here. So the lethal 5 on the Marksman with the optics is really important, and you're just going to want to roll to try and get that lethal 5 going. And then obviously the Chiggerant, once again, the Chiggerant here is because the elves don't typically have access to healing, you want to keep your guys topped up as much as possible. So the Chiggerant can actually heal in this fight as well as shoot reasonably. So I think he has play in this over like another gunner, for example. And then we've got just other horde teams. So this would be teams that have similar kinds of activations to you, if not more. With this one, leader and shield, 3 subductors, so 4 shields in total. Once again, you want to charge groups of guys. So once they stage up and there's 2 or 3 of them in a position, charge a subductor in or charge the leader in. The Malakator is going to provide the severe. The Castigator is going to supply the melee combat support. Leashmaster and Cyber Mastiff, once again, use them to take down threats as they come. Marksman, self-explanatory. Chiggerant is going to just help with the shots, potentially against the Marksman or against the Leashmaster. And then your Vox Signifier here is going to be just a good shooting operative, and he's going to be able to just throw an extra APL out to help potentially the Leashmaster or the Cyber Mastiff get up and take them, you know, external or edge threats out. So they're kind of a few different options. You'll notice here that basically the grenade launcher never gets a look in, the vigilance never get a look in. Once again, there's just these models that I've got on this page are really just the ones that do the most work and have access to the most benefits for your team. You know, with the Malakator, especially with the free mission action and that, if you find good loadouts, I'd really like to see you share them and let everybody else know, because it is a bit of a game and I'm still not getting it perfect myself. But anyways. Okay, general tips here. So try to learn the nuances of each model and learn when it's appropriate to take them. Because each model is pretty unique, even though they have a lot of the same stat lines, the thing is that they have the same stat lines, so it's their abilities that make them valuable. So you really need to learn how and when to use them and what on. The different models will suit your playstyle I play pretty reactive and cagey style, so my operative selections benefit that or are based around that. So if you want to play more aggressive, then you're probably going to take different models to suit that play style. Subductors are your stallers. Don't use them to fight. They are to charge into a model and lock them down and then just wait for support. If you fight with the subductors, it's 4-on-4. You might have ceaseless, but you really need to be hitting 3 hits at least. And when they have the combat support, it's 4-on-3 with ceaseless, which is very much high likelihood of doing that. Otherwise, you just die in combat, basically. You want to try and charge multiple units with your shields and then block lanes. So my favorite thing to do in the world is if there's a little opening, you charge your subductor into that opening, lock down a unit or 2, and then now that lane is shut off to the enemy because they can only move through if they charge. So that's something to consider. The marksman's going to do work. You just have to know where to position him to maximize that value. Generally, Vantage is obviously pretty good. On guard, on big rooms on Into the Dark is another pretty good option. Security tac ops, the new ones seem very viable with this team. So you have Martyr, Envoy, and Plant Banner. All of them seem like this team can do them pretty reliably and score pretty reliably. So pretty excited to do that. I've played one game with the Plant Banner so far and on Into the Dark, which was a bit of a pain. But yeah, it was definitely something that can be done. I think you've got, with the new tac ops, you've got a pretty good chance to score well into the security options. You have to use the operative's abilities as often as possible because that's what generates the value for this team. The ploys are a little bit underwhelming, especially for the strat ploys. So providing the Seek Light and Ignore Obscuring and the Lethal 5+ and the Severe, that's what generates value for this team, more so than the Firefly ploys. So using your operative's abilities is really important, and making sure you maximize them ultimately. Okay, advanced tips now. The Revelatum can be used to alpha strike important units with the First in Field ability, so you can move 6 inches up into the field as part of the strategic ambit. With an early Vox signifier buff, it can then move, dash, and shoot. So at that point, at the end of turning point 1, it can be 15 inches up the board and take a shot. So that's 2/3 of the way up the board. It's not very often, especially if you've got the within 4 inches thing, there's not very often you won't have a shot available. This can then be supported with a turning point 2 massive charge, because it can move 11 inches up the field with a reposition dash with the movement order on. And then at the start of the next turning point, it can then charge 10 inches and then fight with Lethal 5 and Relentless. So if you have a couple of big threats on the enemy team that, like the Magus is a great example of this for Brood Brothers, right? Where if you can get the Mastiff up and kill the Magus on turning point 2 before it can just start deleting models of yours, then that's a pretty good trade. So that's definitely something to consider there. The Alpha Strike potential is one of them things where it plays against the desires of the team, I think, but against the right kind of threat, it's definitely worth considering. Just remember, the team wants you to tie models up and then methodically take them out. This works really well if you're drip-fed enemy models. So you want to block up some lanes or maybe half the board to get that opportunity to have, only deal with 2 or 3 models at a time. If you get overwhelmed and they start getting combat support, then it's going to be very hard to keep your guys alive and to actually, take them out as you need to. The Plant Banner is really achievable with the Cyber Mastiff. There's nothing saying the Cyber Mastiff can't use the ladder and plant the banner. So in my mind, if you can +1 the Cyber Mastiff, reposition and dash up a ladder and onto Vantage kind of thing, then you could get it into some really funny spots where on turning point 2 you just have it placed where the enemy just can't get to it to contest it, and then you have the next turning point to make sure you can get there and contest it yourself kind of thing. So definitely some fun things to think about with the Cyber Mastiff and even Envoy, for example. I think going up against teams with more than 9 activations, if you double activate your Leash Master and use Execution Order, you're now a 9 activation team. And so this means that you either will be out activated, but in counter to that, if you go up against like mandrakes, for example, that will stop them getting counteracts. The other half of this then is if you go up against another 11 operative or plus team, you can then get counteracts. So take all that with a grain of salt. Think about how you can use it to kind of further your ability to do actions. And then really the skill in the team is about maximizing the value of the firefight ploys, because they can effectively make you shoot twice and fight twice in a turning point, which is what you really need to be doing to maximize the value, because you just don't have that much natural raw firepower. So getting to learn to use your firefight ploys, they're very finicky, they're very situational, but if you can somehow guarantee their usage, then you're going to be able to push the team a lot further than most other people. All right, and now on to the final slide here, the conclusion. Obviously, you're going to need to understand your strengths and how to apply them. You're going to need to understand the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Pretty standard approach here. Your team does not play kill team the same way as other teams. Very similar to the mandrakes. Your playstyle is not to move and kill and then move on again. Your thing is to tie up and then take out. So you need to consider the way that this team plays compared to other teams. You have to maximize your specialist abilities to maximize the value of the team. You have to not be too aggressive and then patiently kind of deconstruct your enemy's team as they provide opportunities. I think the TAC Ops favor the Horde teams with the new Approved Ops 2025, and security for us is looking super reliable to score. I have not looked too much at this Seek and Destroy just because I think it favors you being a little bit too aggressive, and you just don't really have the ability to back that up in my mind against most teams like elves, like elites that can hit hard. The subductors, once again, use them as roadblocks. Do not try to win fights with them. The 4-on-4 is not reliable enough to do so. They've only got 8 wounds. They will get killed. You need to be able to just parry out hits with the subductors and use someone else to do the killing. Positioning and synergizing unit abilities take the team a lot further, i.e. the Malacator's ability, the Revelatum's ability, etc., etc. You need to learn how to play and use each model, as they all are slightly different. They all, once again, have the same base stats, which is great. They're all reliable shooters, which is great. But you only really get the maximum out of the team when you're using their abilities correctly and synergistically with each other. So you need to learn the models. Try to learn how to maximize your firefight ploys. This is really, once again, super important because they add a lot of value to the team. But they are very finicky and you have to work really hard to get them to work unless your enemy just falls into that kind of trap. And then remember that this team wants to deny your opponent from doing what they want to do. So, and what I mean by this is like the Nuncio Aquila makes it harder for them to score points. Your ability to get in there and block parry out hits means that like if they want to get in and fight you, you're denying them that opportunity, you're slowing them down. You can stop them from falling back. So it's really about like you want to play the game in a way where it's not about doing what you want to do. It's about doing what denies your enemy from doing what they want to do. And I think that's the key to this team ultimately. I really love this team. I wish they were, as I say in every one of these guides almost, I wish they were a little bit stronger, but I think they've got potential with the new tax. I'm going to continue, much like the Mandrakes, these guys are like, I can't put them down. I keep like thinking about them. I've got the Canoptic that I want to be playing at the moment, but I just keep, there's just a little portion of my brain just devoted to the Exaction Squad. So I'm definitely wanting to keep them around and run them and try and, maximize that value. So anyway, thanks for hanging around. I know this is a bit of a long one. Hope you found this beneficial. If you've got any questions or comments, obviously just throw them in the chat and I'll get back to you. Have a great day. Catch you later.